Hello and welcome to Charlie and Kathleen Beyond the Checkered. This is episode number 2, but the first race recap, the first checkered flag of the NTT IndyCar series.
And what a race it was.
It was a great race down in St. Pete. Unbelievable weekend. But we're going to try and keep this to under an hour because we haven't had a lot of chance to talk about it.
We've talked very briefly about it because you got in late from LAX last night. I was in Arizona all weekend with the kids at spring training. So
go Dodgers. She got to see she and the kids got to see a Shohei Ohtani home run. I was very jealous about that.
It was very fun. And Hannah had her first Dodger dog, which made me like weirdly emotional because my dad has passed away, and so much of like those special times with my dad were at Dodger Stadium. So having Hannah have her first weirdly emotional.
Surprisingly, this is not a Dodgers podcast, so we are going to start.
Talk about them a lot.
We are going to talk about IndyCar. Where do you want to start?
First, I want to thank the teams, the drivers, the broadcast for having such a great race to unpack for us. Because it was like, I think there's going to be a lot to talk about, and we're really going to, like we said, try and keep it under an hour, but I doubt that's going to happen because there was just so much happening over the race weekend. It wasn't just a follow the leader race. There was so much happening and so much we can explain.
Right.
So that will hopefully make it so the next race you watch, you can enjoy a little bit more.
Yep. Next race at Thermal here in a couple of weeks. Teams get to catch their breath, but catch their breath they deserve to, because not only was it a great race, it was an incredible weekend. You weren't here. You weren't there. I was there on boots on the ground, as they say. It was so much fun. Chamber of Commerce weather all 3 days. Sun-drenched, St. Pete, Florida. I thought it was going to be busy when on Friday it felt like a Sunday. And Saturday felt like Sunday on steroids. And Sunday, getting from the paddock garage area out to pit lane felt like...
It's not like the longest.
It's not a long walk, but it felt like Gasoline Alley on Indy 500 race morning. It was so busy.
But no whistles. Were there whistles?
There were some whistles. No yellow shirts doing a really good job making sure people got where they needed to go. But the vibe all weekend long, people were excited about the race, going for the first time, coming back. It always has that first day of school vibe. This weekend was off the charts. I think there was a lot of excitement about Fox as a broadcast partner as well.
And I thought they did a great job. You didn't really get to watch the broadcast.
No.
Because you were, as you say, boots on the ground. I was driving back from Arizona, so I mostly listened to the broadcast. I didn't get to like intently watch it because
you were driving our kids very safely, right?
I was driving our kids very, very safely. And so I really just listened to the broadcast. And
what stood out to you? Good, bad, ugly.
Good, bad, ugly. It was great to hear James's voice because I love, he's a good friend of ours and I love him. And him and Townsend I thought were great. I thought Will Buxton was really, really good. You can tell he's put a lot of work in to making sure he knows the driver's histories and the series histories. So I felt like he slid into that role really, really well.
And the broadcast piece I did hear, I felt like James and Townsend and Kevin and Jamie in pit lane, being super experienced, were able to support Will as he figured some of the things out, some of the nuances, right? There was a lot meant on a broadcast.
Yeah, there were. And back to Jamie, I've known Jamie as long as I've known you, probably, because we have like a hometown connection, a small one. And it was so great to see her in there, but I'll be very excited to have Georgia back as well. But Jamie's just like such a professional, and you can tell she loves racing and is good at it. And she was a really like a joy to have on the broadcast.
And being on the backside on the broadcast, all of the support staff, maybe not the front of camera, but behind the camera, the running up and down pit lane, collecting notes and chasing cameramen and making sure everybody is where to make that magic. Like, I heard that there were some technical glitches with and some of the data, right? Some of the visuals were awesome on the broadcast, right?
Yeah, the screen was
over the halo. There was some pushback.
I didn't watch it very much because
I guess driving. But I heard there's maybe been some pushback on teams because those onboard cameras, that's such a great sponsorship placement pit.
Yeah.
So when you go on board, you see Cliff Steele, you see a Sirius XM radio talking about the Meyershank car. But with that graphic there, that covers all that up. So the teams are like, okay, how do we adapt and adjust?
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
So there was some conversation about, okay, teams weren't loving it, but the fans were loving it. There was a lot more information coming at them. But in qualifying on the broadcast, some of are they up? Are they down? Are they in the top 6 or top 12? Are they in the bubble, outside the bubble?
Yeah.
Some of that delta timing wasn't yet integrated to the graphics.
As someone who watched that, I didn't notice it.
Okay.
So
It frustrated me because I watched in hospitality.
well, I was watching it while watching the kids, and so I wasn't paying super duper attention to it.
I had 3 screens up.
Okay.
I had my iPad, my phone, and my laptop with time on and scoring. Sitting in hospitality, trying to figure out who was going to make it, who wasn't. But yeah, great job. Honestly, I think for race 1,
Yeah.
moon.
I'm sure we'll hear a lot about the behind the scenes chaos that absolutely should have happened, because you never know what a race weekend's going to be like till you get there, and I'm sure we'll hear a lot about it in the coming days. But the broadcast, what was on it, seemed really smooth.
Yeah, so the technical, maybe there are some teething issues to work out or teething problems.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the content's great.
Yeah.
And the excitement, the enthusiasm, the promotion.
Yeah.
All wins.
Yeah, I agree. So I made us an agenda. So hopefully we don't go too far over our 1 hour mark. And also I don't want to jump around too much. So one of the main stars of this weekend was the tires that Firestone brought, the green.
Waiulis.
You get to say that. The green tires that are the softer compound tire. They were very soft from what I gathered.
Yeah.
And no one had driven them before. No one had seen them before. So it was just kind of teams and drivers trying to figure it out on the fly. And it made for an interesting qualifying, I think. Like I said, I didn't get to watch it with 3 screens. And it definitely made for an interesting race. So I want to kind of take a moment, talk about how tires affect the performance of the car, how it affects the race, how it affects qualifying, from your point of view, my point of view.
So I think there are 2 real elements when it comes to the Firestone alternates. For street circuits, they are Waiuli based. So it is a renewable plant, I think, that grows in the Southwest, rather than traditional rubber or synthetic rubber, petroleum based. And again, I apologize to the engineers, Kara Kristalik at Firestone and Firestone Racing if I get that wrong. Maybe we'll have her on one day to correct me. But not only was the tire itself as requested by teams and drivers and the series, Firestone did exactly what was asked of them.
Yeah.
To make a softer, grippier, faster, but also when you have a faster tire like that, more load, more temperature, more thermal degradation, more rubber degradation, and therefore more lap time degradation.
Yeah.
And the second piece was that IndyCar changed the rules for allotment of tires. So there were extra sets of alternates available throughout the weekend.
Okay.
So in a race weekend, when the alternates are the preferred tire, you will have more new tires to run on race day.
Oh.
You have more new tires. You could run 1 set of alternates in Q1, Q2, and Q3.
So, but a lot of times we don't know what the preferred tire is till the
and that's
weekend plays out.
Exactly. Right. So it's a little bit of a gamble. It's
Especially
a little bit of
on street circuits.
And what you can tell on the first practice on Friday, there is 1 set of those alternates that you get to use.
Mm-hmm.
You have to return them. So you want to use them, see what it does. But the track rubbering up, if you think about how much rubber goes down per car, per lap, then you multiply it by 27 Indy cars doing 20 laps in a session, it grips up. Plus, you add the Indy Next cars putting Firestone rubber down.
Yeah.
Plus all the other support series, the USF championships, and the MX5 Cup that was there this weekend. So it is a lot to learn on what the tires are, where the lap time is, what the degradation is. And what we were starting to notice was that they were one lap wonders.
Yeah.
And that meant that qualifying, you had to get it done.
So I want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
The tires last more than one lap.
Yes.
Just the peak of the tire, that perfect balance between grip, heat, and performance was only really one lap.
And then they were a little bit slower on the second lap.
Yeah.
2 to 3 tenths of a second.
Oh, that's a significant amount when the top 10 is covered by, well, except for Scott McLaughlin, but the top 10 was covered by what, 0.2 of a second?
I think so. It was pretty tight. And so, and then when you ran them for a full stint, which is on fuel north of 30 laps, there were seconds in degradation.
Yeah.
They would start to, I saw a set come off in warm up Sunday morning, and the right rear, predominantly a right hand turn track, so the left rear gets more load. The right rear was shredded.
That's not good.
So which happens, and there's another piece in this, is that this is the first time we've gone to St. Pete with the weight of the hybrid in the bell housing.
Yeah.
Right? There's another.
And how much more weight does that add?
It's about 100 pounds.
So the whole car now, because it used to be the whole car was 1,600 pounds with driver, right?
In that window.
Okay, so now it's like...
It's higher because of the weight of the hybrid.
Okay.
They've adjusted for that, but they started last year with lighter bell housings. So the piece between the engine and the gearbox is called the bell housing. And that piece, they went, I believe, from aluminum to magnesium, which is lighter with similar structure. Maybe a little more brittle. I've heard some failures and things like that as part of the rising cost conversation coming out of 24, coming into 25. But when they added the MGU and the battery, the whole hybrid piece, right? How you capture energy and store it, and then redeploy it. It's heavier, and higher weight means more load for the same lap time.
And especially on high G corners, that's like 4 times the amount of load, right?
Yes, it's a square. I believe my physics teacher would smack me if she knew. Anyways, moving on. So yes, tires, big conversation. Softer tires were way faster with the weight compensated. So very similar lap times we saw, but much higher degradation. So a bigger strategy conversation from Friday's practice all the way through to Sunday. And it really set the stage for the result on Sunday.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it really played out. Like, that was the biggest part of who won on Sunday, I think. So, practice and qualifying?
Yes.
Who surprised you? Who did you expect to be? Who was underwhelming? I have somebody I want to talk about.
So, in practice, I was really impressed with the Foyt combination of Santino, Ferrucci, and David Malukas.
Yep.
Santino, bunch of top 10s last year, finished 9th in the championship standing. Great result. You know, the technical alliance with Penske helps there for sure. But having those two drivers, it was going to be very interesting. And it's something I watched from the outside, walking up and down pit lane and around the garage area, what that looked like on their interactions together, right? As drivers. And it seems like they have integrated well together. They're working well together. They're pushing each other. And as there were times where in the two sessions, they finished within half a tenth of each other within the top 15, top 12, top 10. So really impressive, really great start to that momentum wise. In practice, qualifying maybe didn't go quite to plan there. Qualifying wise, I was really surprised to see Will Power have such a tough day in qualifying.
Why do you think he just didn't maximize that tire? Or
he said he made a mistake.
Okay.
He said he just missed it in one corner.
Too, right?
Alexander Rossi, same thing. It was a small mistake. In fact, when I was talking to him on the grid after warm-up Sunday morning, he and I were walking and talking about airplanes and stuff, and talk about race cars for a little bit.
Shocking.
And he said, yeah, he just, got caught out a little bit with some of the stuff. He's really buoyed by the engineering support at ECR at Carpenter Racing, and feels really good about where it is. And there's some things some teething problems, right? We saw teething problems catch people out even on Sunday, and we'll talk about that. But practice and qualifying, surprised by willpower. Pato O'Ward obviously missed it, and that's a huge conversation for Sunday. But I was really impressed with Nolan Siegel and Christian Lundgaard coming right up to speed.
What's not to be
at
impressed? I mean, how old? Nolan's 19?
I think so. I think he's more than 18 now, but he's still 19. He's still young.
Yeah. I mean, I'm so impressed with him. Christian Lundgaard, I mean, we talked about it last week about wondering if there was going to be a culture shift. Is there going to be, and obviously, no.
Yep.
The Meyer Shank.
Yeah, they were really good all weekend long.
And we talked about that last time too, about how they qualified really well. And we were curious if they were going to be able to bring that on. And not only was Rosenqvist able to do it, but Armstrong joined in. I mean, they cleaned out the second row of qualifying.
And one of the really interesting tidbits that came out of conversations and press conferences and things over the weekend, Marcus Armstrong, still a contracted Chip Ganassi Racing driver on quote unquote loan. I think like British or European, like global football teams do this all the time where they have a player and it doesn't really fit in with who they've got with somebody retiring or something, and they loan them out to other teams for a bit. And I think that's part of the Chip Ganassi Racing, Meyer Shank Racing technical alliance is there's some driver engineering support back and forth.
Yeah.
So great to see Marcus and Felix Rosenqvist.
I mean, for Marcus to show that kind of speed
right away,
is super impressive. I was very impressed with Scott McLaughlin. Obviously, he won the pole. How cute is his little baby?
I didn't get to see his little kiddo, but you know they say when you become a dad, you lose 2/10, and he out-qualified the field by what? 2/10. So he actually
gained 4/10.
He actually beat everyone by 4/10 when you do the dad factor.
Yeah, I hate that stupid. So
because it's not true.
It's just not true, and it's I don't know.
He smoked him. He smoked everybody.
Yeah, but he had a big shunt
on Friday.
In practice on Friday. They stayed late, got the car together. I mean, it shows how good Penske is that they can completely rebuild a car and then go put it on hold by 2/10 in the series.
So it was a big crash. It was dramatic for sure. And there was a good amount of damage.
Yeah.
But it wasn't as big as you've seen at St. Pete.
No, it wasn't a tub. It wasn't all that. But
it wasn't two corners. He hit the wall, and I think it looked more dramatic because he hit the wall, and I think it broke the wishbones and the upright connection.
Yeah, we did text about this a little bit.
And I think then when he got off the gas, he realized he'd had a big impact and maybe went to the brakes. The load of the brake and the grip of the tire ripped it off, so it looked like it exploded.
It looked like it was,
but I think it had already failed. It just hadn't
fallen apart.
Yeah, hadn't fallen apart yet. Yeah. So yes, it's so hard. And excuse me, as a driver, you really want to repay your mechanics, right? The mentality is, man, I created a bunch of work. They were there really late, way past garage hours, getting it all put back together. Extenuating circumstances, and it's hard. It's a long season as it is. You don't want to make it harder on your mechanics. The best way to repay them is to go out and stick the car on pole, or go out and stick the car in victory lane.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? I will say I did that when I went up Mid-Ohio.
Yeah.
Practice 2, I think it was, or practice 3 Saturday morning. It rained overnight. Turn 1 Mid-Ohio under the bridge. Still damp. Spun off. Wrote the whole back of the car off. Yeah. All 4 Chip Ganassi Racing car mechanics.
There were so many different colors putting that car back together.
Got together, qualified in the top 6, went out the next day and won. And no one talks about my crash. They all talk about is the win.
Yeah.
Same with Scott McLaughlin. Talk about his crash on Friday. The big highlight of the conversation was his bounce back to pole.
I agree. Okay. So is that everything you want to talk about with qualifying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Just.
What do you want to talk about Renus real quick? I thought he did a decent job.
The Dale Coyne car is really impressive.
Yeah.
Jacob Abel obviously has a lot to learn as a rookie.
Yeah.
Finished top 3 in the Indianapolis Championship last year. Has a lot to learn and is doing great. And great job for Arenas. Did a good job. Really, really consistently quick all weekend long. I was trying to actually look where he started. He started 12th.
Yeah. Because he made it into the
once you make it, and you make it through your first group, and you're not going to start worse than 12th. There were a lot of cars. We talked about Will Power, Pato O'Ward, didn't make it out of the top 12.
Yeah.
Alex Rossi, David Malukas. There's some big names that are outside Graham Rahal in 21st.
Yeah.
There's some big names that didn't make it into the top 12.
Yeah.
So, really great job for that 18 Dale Coyne Racing car.
Yeah. I mean, the little team that could, right?
They continue to prove that.
Okay, so now it's time for the race. And there's one thing I want to, that I don't think it's talked about enough with strategy. And this was a very strategy heavy race. This was not who went out and was the fastest all day. The way you win a race is to be the shortest time from green to checkered. It doesn't matter if you pass the most cars. It doesn't matter if you, whatever else it looks like winning a race looks like.
Right.
It is the shortest time from green to checkered. So if you're able to make up a second on an out lap, if you are able to have consistently really good pit stops and you don't have any long pit stops and you, don't get caught by traffic, you're going to have a better shot at winning the race.
Right.
So I didn't see Alex Blow pass that many people on track, but he won that race because it was the shortest time from green to checkered, right? Because he was able to maximize all those little bits. That's also why Colton had such a bad race.
Bad result.
Yes. Because it was a second here, a second there, 30 seconds here that just caught him out. And because I don't know where
I want to go back. 30 seconds here. Because if you are able, I think one of the conversations is often about strategy in an IndyCar race is, everyone's saving fuel. They're going a second a lap slower.
Yeah.
But they're going to save a pit stop.
Yeah.
At somewhere like St. Pete, the pit lane's not that long. I think it's 27 to 32 seconds.
I think James said 28 on the broadcast.
Okay, so 28 roughly. Long Beach, it's 45 seconds.
Yeah.
The Indianapolis Motor Speedway at 60 miles an hour on an oval, it's more like 40 seconds.
Yes.
So you have to take into account the extra stop.
Yes.
So if you can save the fuel and save the tires.
But why did he have the extra stop to begin with, right?
Because they had a problem.
Exactly.
Because of teething issues.
Yes.
You see this in the first race of every season, every year.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and I will say you see this not just in race cars and race teams, but you see this in race control. You see this in broadcast.
Yeah.
Things that you turned off 6 months ago at the last race, and you turn back on and they don't start up, and then you're scrambling. So you have to adjust to these teething problems. Colton had a problem with his inside rear and didn't get fuel in his first or second stop. And that set the tone for the rest of his day.
Exactly. So I think it's one of the most frustrating things about IndyCar, and also one of the things that makes winning so sweet is you have to get every teeny tiny thing right. And I know Chip used to say to you, get the easy things right.
Yep, do the obvious things right.
And I think that is what Ganassi does so well.
And they still have problems.
Like, Scott Dixon didn't have a radio.
Well, so he did have a radio.
For 10 laps.
Which was the critical pit stop. Right? So going...
I don't know if it... Okay, I'm going to argue with that on...
So the way the strategy worked out, there was a split between cars at the start of the race. The way IndyCar works is after warm-up or after the session right before the race, if it's qualifying or if it's warm-up, 30 minutes after the end of that session, you have to declare tires.
And by declaring tires, you mean say which tires you're going to start out, the primaries or the alternates.
Correct. In this case, everyone's experience from Friday's practice and then in qualifying was that the alternates were super fast and super fragile.
Yes.
They were good for 4, 5, 6, maybe 10 laps.
Yes.
Now,
and the other important piece of this is you have to use both tires in the race. You have to use the primary and the alternate. So you can't just use primaries the whole time. You have to use both.
correct. And you have to complete 2 laps on each tire.
Okay.
And the rule here, this is a little nitty gritty and maybe 2 nuts and bolts, but you have to complete 2 laps, the second of which can be completed entering pit lane.
Okay.
And they have to be under green. You have to complete at least 1 lap under green.
Oh, okay.
So it looks like, and the reason they do this is, let's say you go out and let's say the alternates, in this case, the alternate's not the preferred tire.
Yeah.
If you could have chosen, you would have run primaries every 100 laps.
Yes, not all of them.
So there was that 6-lap yellow at the start of the race. You start on primaries, you come in, you put alternates on, you circle 2 laps under yellow, come back in, put primaries on, right? That does not satisfy it because you did not start a lap under green.
Yes.
Because the race started, they saw a green flag as they came past the start-finish line, through turn 1, through turn 2, turn 3, contact between Will Power, Nolan Siegel, takes out...
Jacob Abel.
No.
Oh, Louis Foster, sorry.
And takes out Will Power, Nolan Siegel, and Louis Foster.
Yeah.
So Power ran into the back of Siegel, spun that.
We're not going to place blame. Things happened and cars crashed.
There was contact.
Because you hated when people place blame that maybe wasn't attributed to you.
And
there was contact and people didn't make it out at the lap 1.
And so there's a yellow, but because that lap started under green,
that counted.
That satisfies a green lap for the alternate.
Yeah.
So then the second lap, first time, right, goes yellow, pits close.
Yeah.
So that the safety car driven by Oriol Servia can collect everybody.
Yeah.
Safety crew can start cleaning up the incident. Once the safety team lets race control know that they have things, a clear lane, they have things under control, there's pack up and sort of...
There's not someone trying to catch up really quickly.
Exactly. All of that management, then they reopen the pit lane. That happened on lap 2.
Okay.
So that second lap, they were able to finish in pit lane, satisfies the drivers, cars, teams who had started on alternates.
Yeah.
They were now good to go primaries to the end.
Yes. So we saw a bunch of people, specifically people except for Colton, but anyone that started on the primaries and was far up in the
track position,
had good track position, stayed out. So that was like Scott McLaughlin and the Shank cars and they stayed out. And then we saw Scott and Alex.
Colton, Scott. Colton.
Are these blue dots? Are those pits?
Yeah. So I am holding in my hands the lap chart, and it shows green laps, yellow laps. It shows when cars pit, also fastest lap, and when cars get lapped.
Okay.
So I love these because you can pick 2 or 3, and you're like, how did that guy finish 5th when he started 20th? And you can see when he made positions, passes on track based on car numbers flipping, pit stops, things like that. So Colton Herta in 7th, despite starting 2nd, was running 2nd at the end of lap 1, pits, and because of where he was and when he came into pit lane, shows him 7th, but he was 2nd in the order. He started on alternates, came in, went to primaries.
Yep. He's
in the catbird seat.
Yes.
At that moment, he is at least on the, say, alternate strategy or the B strategy. He's in the catbird seat. Scott McLaughlin started on primaries, maybe the more traditional conservative strategy choice. He stays out to go long.
Yes. So it's kind of my understanding that anyone who started on alternates was kind of gambling that there was going to be an early yellow.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
Because if you pit under yellow, it takes a lot less time from green to checkered to get that pit stop done because everyone's going slower.
Correct, because it takes the same 30 seconds, but you get to catch up.
Yeah.
You get to end up, you lose track position, but you gain time.
Yes. And anyone who started on the primaries was gambling that there wasn't going to be an early yellow.
Correct. And
that's just literally because
Roll the magic 8-ball.
James said on the broadcast, 50% of the races, which is literally 50-50, have a lap in the first, a yellow in the first 3 laps.
Correct.
So you were just the teams were just kind of guessing on what they thought was going to happen.
And very often those percentages for yellows, you see on street circuits, you see the opportunity for incidents at the start.
Yeah.
And then there tends to be a bump in the percentage likelihood of yellows around the pit stop windows.
Yeah.
Because it's a dynamic situation. People are pushing, people are coming out on cold tires. I did it in my rookie race, my first ever IndyCar race, first ever pit stop, came out, blew the wall down in turn 3.
Full fuel, cold tires. You've never felt that before.
And went too hard through 3 and knocked the wall down and caused a yellow.
And then Dario was very kind and said, mate, I do that all the time. Or I've done it before.
Yeah, I learned that lesson my first race too. So you have to kind of gamble on strategy.
Yeah.
And especially if you've got a good car. See Scott Dixon, Alex Palou, Joseph Newgarden, Marcus Ericsson. Who else am I looking at here? Kiffin Simpson kind of drafting off the Scott Dixon, Marcus Ericsson, Palou strategy, Pato O'Ward. Pato O'Ward's an anomaly here, and I want to highlight this. Pato qualified way back in 23rd, right? Way faster car than that. He started on primaries.
Yeah.
So it didn't make sense to me in that moment. I was standing in pit lane looking at the Firestone tire data, why he would take that opportunity to pit.
Except to top up on fuel.
They went to another set of primaries because he had a puncture because he was behind the incident.
Oh, I forgot. I did see that on
debris.
Broadcast.
So he had a puncture, had to come in to protect the tire, put another set of primaries on. So he hasn't satisfied the alternate requirement. So he'd still have to run the more fragile alternate Iulis later in the race.
Okay. Can we talk about Scott Dixon now?
Yes.
Because we talked a little bit about it earlier. So Scott dropped this little nugget of information during his
post-race interview
that he didn't have a radio. And Charlie, I think this proves that Scott is the GOAT because not having a radio, Charlie said he had it during this part here, during the yellow to get called in to get the alternates off. And I get that. But then he did the rest of the race without a radio.
Yeah. And like I said, new season, first race, there's teething problems.
Yeah.
Sometimes radios fail. We saw it with Robert Schwartzman in the Prema car. They didn't get to run much of practice because they had radio issues. If you don't have radio communication, you can't go out. Scott obviously started the race with radio communication, and he knew the plan. If there was a yellow lap 1, he was coming in.
Yeah.
And having been in strategy meetings within that team and within IndyCar teams for a decade, if you don't know what to do, you follow the leaders.
Yeah.
Right? In this case, if you don't know what to do, right, if you don't have a call from the team, they're going to be ready for you no matter what.
Are they?
Yes, because if that's the deal, that's always the prep. If there's no radio communication and you don't hear confirmation, they just have to be ready to react. Now, I will point out most of the teams, not all of them, most of them on a road and street circuit have a spotter.
Yeah.
So there's someone in turn 1 helping them at pit out and through turn 1. They will have their binoculars on their car as soon as it comes out of the last corner. And if Scott dives towards the pit lane, he's on the radio. He's coming in.
Yeah.
And because he was far enough down pit lane with where he finished in the championship last year, they had time to set up.
But
so that mitigates some of the challenge.
And is also a crazy challenge.
Yes, you are still racing at 180 miles an hour through a concrete canyon for 100 laps on a 1.7 mile circuit. And you are figuring out your own strategy in those moments when you have a spare thought.
Is figuring out his own strategy. He said he just came in when the fuel light came on. He didn't have fuel numbers. So he didn't know if he was supposed to save fuel or not. I mean, he knew in his brain about what the fuel strategy was going to be and about how many laps it was. But he's out there on his lonesome, just figuring it out as he goes.
And that's 20 plus years of experience.
And that's so amazing. And I just like, he didn't want kudos for it. He just was bummed he didn't win the race because he didn't get called in when there was traffic in front of him like Alex did.
And that's the other thing is because he was ahead.
Yeah.
He didn't see Alex Palou pit.
Mm-hmm.
Had he seen Alex Palou pit, he comes the next lap to cover, quote unquote, hedge his bet against what Alex did, which is called an undercut, where you come in early. And because Scott hit traffic and he lost 3 seconds because of that traffic, it meant that those positions swapped in pit lane.
Yes. And
still very impressive.
I'm so impressed with Scott. I mean, he's just
he's never won at St. Pete. And the fact that he started the season with a podium, I think everyone should watch out.
I mean, everyone should always watch out.
But typically
he started the race with a podium with no radio.
Yeah, but
you aren't as impressed with this as I am.
No, I'm not.
I really am.
Like, I am. It's impressive. But it's also, like, when Scott continues to do what Scott does, like, it's hard to keep impressing because it's so spectacular and so understatedly successful.
Yeah. I mean, yes. Yeah. Okay. So we jumped a little bit. We talked about the strategies that played out.
Yep. And the Scott McLaughlin, right? Outqualified everyone by 2/10.
Yeah.
Fuel mileage, I couldn't tell if there was a real benefit, Honda or Chevy-wise. I don't have any of the data. I didn't really look at...
fuel mileage race. It was a tire race.
Yeah, but the cars that started on primaries were, despite it being a guaranteed 3-stop race, most people were going to try and go as long as they could on every primary stint and go as short as they could on the alternate stint. Mm-hmm. So to do that, you have to have good fuel match. So I couldn't tell if there was a benefit, Honda or Chevy. I do want to point out the alternate strategy for Felix Rosenqvist, my favorite fan I saw all weekend, had a blue afro with FRO on it, as in fro. Felix Rosenqvist. He's like, yeah, you like my afro? And I was like, oh my God, it's the best thing ever. So Felix and Marcus had unbelievable pace.
Yeah.
And they could make the alternates live. So the fact that at the end of the race, one was in the garage, he was heartbroken.
Yeah.
Absolutely heartbroken. I'm trying to remember. So was the 3 there? It was about lap. Yep. It was Marcus Armstrong in the 66 on lap 46. Hit the wall.
Yeah.
Bent the left rear. Game over. He was able to make the alternates work. He said he was going slow, still doing great lap types, and he could have made it work for 25 laps, which means he does a 2-stop. Everyone else does 3 stops, and he beats them. He has 28 seconds in hand.
Yeah, but that's great, but he didn't execute.
And that's heartbreaking.
Yes. But it means maybe we have something cool to look forward to later. I don't know what the plan is with tires later in the season, if we're going to have a similar tire at Long Beach.
I think very often the street circuit tire will be the same. I think that the teams will learn, right? This is all new. They will make improvements. They will learn a lot going to Long Beach. But I think the Meyer-Shank cars were always good on street circuits. I think Felix Rosenqvist and Marcus Armstrong are particularly talented on street circuits. And the fact that they have gone from Andretti support to Chip Ganassi Racing Technical Alliance has not changed their speed there. And that will be, I know that Michael Shank said they've had 6 podiums over their team's whole career, and he'd be disappointed if they didn't have 6 podiums this year. So they've set high goals, and I think they could be on track to get those.
Where did Felix end up? Like 7th, maybe?
At the end of the race, Felix Rosenqvist was 7th, yes.
So he started 3rd.
Yes.
And ended up 7th.
Yes.
Why is that?
They just weren't able to execute.
So that's what we talked about last week, right?
Yeah.
They're doing these amazing qualifyings and not bringing it through. So what do they need to do to, like, where can they find that improvement to stay in that podium contention?
I think part of it is good strategy calls. They were pretty consistent with the strategy calls.
It looks like they hit a little early here.
So, yeah, he pit on lap 31.
Okay.
McLaughlin pit on lap... Where's Scotty Mac? On 32.
Okay.
And Marcus pit on lap 35. So they did split a little bit.
Okay.
I haven't watched the broadcast back yet to figure out exactly where he just, maybe it was. And one of the things is it's easy to cascade, right? If you don't have a great pit stop or you don't come out and clear track and that traffic, and then you lose momentum, and pretty soon a second difference.
He was on that other strategy, right? He was on the same strategy as McLaughlin. McLaughlin finished 4th. He finished 7th.
Right.
So he really
he did pretty well.
Yeah.
It just was a slower strategy.
Yeah.
And had Colton Herta not have fuel issues and pit stop issues, Colton beats everybody.
Oh, for sure.
And, and because of all those issues, Colton finished all the way back in 16th.
Yeah. Ouch.
So, yeah, from what could have been a race win.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to talk about this. I am very interested to see how the Foyt crew, with 2 strong drivers, with the Penske Alliance, I'm really interested to see how they progress through the year. And I'm a little bummed that they did not split strategies. That Malukas, because they qualified very similarly, that they didn't have Malukas start on primaries and Santino start on alternates, or the other way around. Because I feel like they could have had much better results had they split strategies. And I'm a little bummed they didn't do that, because it would have been so fun to see.
Yeah, I think, again, it's race 1, and it's so easy to Monday morning quarterback and have Monday over.
I said this during the broadcast. I said it. I literally said out loud,
why didn't they split?
Why didn't they split strategies?
So I don't know. I'll ask Larry next time I see him, and I'll get an answer for you. But
then again, I don't know what tire Pillow and Dixie started on.
Pillow and Dixie started on the alternates. Lucas and Santino started on primaries.
I guess I can't be that mad, since the Ganassi cars didn't split strategies either.
Correct. And so I think one of the thoughts was they didn't have enough information to adequately split strategies. Right? They didn't know if the alternates were really going to fall apart like that.
Yeah.
And what they do by running the same strategy, which was the Scott McLaughlin conservative pole sitter strategy. So you start on primaries, you run primaries long, you run primaries long again, you run alternates. Maybe that third stint, by the time you get there, there's enough rubber down, the pace is slowed down, there's enough yellow that all of a sudden you look like the right strategy.
Yeah.
Because we had that first yellow lap 1 to 6. It went green for the next 94 laps.
Which is crazy.
It is atypical.
Yeah.
Part of that.
Do you know in your brain how many laps of yellow there are on average at St. Pete?
I want to say it's usually like 9 to 12.
Okay.
It's about 10% of the laps.
Okay.
At least that's my gut. I don't have a an empirical sheet that says that at the moment. But I'm not going to do the math, but my gut is it's about 10% of the laps.
So it was shy on yellow.
It was lower than the average. So if you're playing the averages, right?
Yeah.
You don't have a crystal ball. You're playing the averages. It makes sense to do the conservative strategy, because then maybe the rubber goes down.
But does it make sense to do the conservative strategy when you're not far up in the field, when you don't have the track position?
I mean, they weren't terrible. They were 17th and 19th, and from 17th and 19th, you get 2 or 3 incidents, you're inside the top 10. And if you're inside the top 10 and on the wrong strategy, you're outside the top 10 at the result.
Okay. Well, I think we're just going to have to agree to disagree on this one, because I think they should have split strategies.
And I will ask why they didn't. I mean, they finished 13th and 14th. So they moved up those 3 spots that the crash happened, right?
The crash was behind, wasn't it?
It was. Yes, it was, because Power qualified further back.
Yeah.
I believe. So that means, they moved up some spots. And talking to the mechanics, there were a couple of teething issues in pit stops that cost them some spots. So.
Okay, the next thing we have to talk about is Pato.
Oh my God. Unbelievable, right? Qualifies terribly, right? Has a 23rd place starting spot.
Ouch.
Right? Pato O'Ward was out-qualified by Robert Schwartzman in his IndyCar debut with a brand new team. Right?
He was out-qualified by a lot of people.
That is not the Pato on the magazine covers that we saw on the Fox commercials.
Yeah.
Also, there were pop-up stands in the fan zone with Joseph's cologne and Pato's magazine.
That's awesome.
It was great activation. Really awesome job by Fox here. And yet, Pato's never out of it, right? We've seen his fast hands, boxing training, all of that. He's a fighter. The team's a fighter. Tony Kanaan has really instilled that never give up mentality since he's taken over as team principal. And he then has a puncture on lap 1.
Yep.
He should have all of those cars that stopped on lap 2. He should have moved past them on the primaries to then be like 10th in that alternate, in the sort of strategy of the pole sitter.
Mm-hmm.
But because of his puncture, he didn't.
Yeah.
So he comes in, puts primaries on again. And that confused me a little bit, but it meant that he went long. So if there was a yellow, he was in the catbirds. He was able to take advantage of that yellow. And it meant that he didn't actually run a full tank of fuel before he pitted.
Yeah.
Because he pitted, he had to come out still on the lead lap.
Yeah.
Because then if there's a yellow, you hedge against that.
Yeah.
So it meant he didn't get to go all the way along with the primary, but he just kept fighting. And he passed cars on track. He passed cars in pit lane. And he was running up front. Let's see, his final pit stop was lap 85. 15 laps to go. He pits out of 7th, goes back to 11th, and finishes 11th. From 23rd. Unbelievable. It was really...
That's some Charlie Kimball stuff.
Well, yeah. Yeah, usually, yeah. I got a lot of bad qualifying, good finish awards. And it's one of those mentalities that he got dealt, like a bad starting spot is first strike. Strike 2, you get a puncture on lap 1. Your strategy goes out the window. You don't take advantage of your tires. So you're in a hole again. And he just kept fighting.
Yeah. Great.
It was really, really good.
That's a good start to the championship, right?
If
you can take your bad days and turn them into okay days, then on your good days, like that's what Scott does so well, right?
And that's how Alex Flow's won the championship.
Yep.
2 years in a row. Is his worst finish has been consistently the best in the grid.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
His bad days are less bad than everyone else.
Yes.
Great days, you can't do any better than first.
No.
Right? And wins are important because there's a point, championship point delta of 10 for a win. But if you finish 10th instead of 17th, there's as many points there as there are between first and second.
Yes. Yes.
So we've covered all our notes, and now we had gotten a couple of questions on social media. Next time, after the post-thermal recap, if you have any questions for Charlie and Kathleen's Beyond the Checkered, you can let us know on my Instagram at Charlie Kimball, Kathleen's Instagram at Kathleen Kimball with only one L because that's tradition, or on
any comments, whatever.
Any social media. Yep. Just smoke signals, carrier pigeons, let us know.
I'm too busy deciphering
my signals.
I was thinking not like kid instead of they're not toddlers anymore.
Yeah.
But okay. So Justin Vining, who you can't see, but there's a beautiful painting right up here that he did for our 5th anniversary. Is a friend of ours in Indianapolis, and he wants to know, was it the weight of the car that led to less on-track passes? And I have thoughts about this, but I'll let you answer first.
So I think part of it is St. Pete's typically a very challenging track to pass on.
That's kind of what I thought.
And I think the momentum shift of having heavier cars makes it harder to pass.
Yep.
And yet we still saw a couple of passes for the lead.
Yep.
So I think the racing...
Dixie's passed on Newgarden. I think Newgarden was maybe like out of fuel or something.
Right at the end?
Yeah.
So Joseph ran out of fuel coming to the line.
But so was when Dixie passed him, was he trying to like conserve the fuel?
He got the radio call, let the 9 car go, don't fight, coast home.
Okay.
Because if you fight him, you could finish 10th or 15th, last of the lead lap.
Yeah.
But if you don't fight him and give up one spot, you could still finish on the podium.
And that's some championship stuff.
And that's championship caliber mindset from Team Penske.
Yes.
What else we got?
Is there anything IndyCar can improve / change before the next race so we get racier on track? I'm getting the feeling that Justin did not think it was very racy. That is not the feeling I got. But
I thought it was a great race, and maybe because I enjoy the strategy and the strategic machinations of... Apparently, James used Schadenfreude on that podcast, so which probably just confused Townsend. So I figured I better update my because when you say a big word like that, Townsend just looks at you like that doesn't belong on TV.
I thought it was a great word. I love that.
Again, I missed it on the broadcast, but I think that I enjoyed the strategic piece of it. I thought it was a great race. There was a lot of roars from the crowd when things happened and pit in, pit out, all of that. Yeah. But I don't know that things need to change, right? It's round 1. We heard that from Joseph in the post-race press conference. He got asked, how do you beat Pelot to the championship? Because Pelot won one race. Joseph goes, that's a ridiculous question. It's round 1. Yeah. And I agree. Like we don't have to reinvent the wheel here. Yeah. It's round 1.
I think the point of the race is to win, but the point of the broadcast is to be entertaining.
Yeah.
And I was very entertained throughout the whole race. I thought it was great. On-track passes or not, like I didn't even notice there weren't a lot of on-track passes because I was so excited with the strategy calls and all of that.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is another question from Justin. How good would Rena's VK be in a top car? Do you think he will ever get a shot?
So I think when he won his race in an Ed Carpenter car, I think that was a top car that weekend. And I think he's good. But again, race 1, right? He was very motivated coming into this weekend to prove that he deserved that ride that went elsewhere. So I think very motivated. I think he is very talented.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think IndyCar is so competitive that of the 27 cars, there's probably 23 this past weekend that had things gone right.
Yeah.
Could have had the speed to win.
Yeah, I agree. I think...
And I will say that, like, once they unloaded, it was already going wrong. But that, like...
What do you mean?
They just had the wrong setup and right.
But they have found it.
Everybody has the ability. Yes.
The other thing is like, okay, we can talk about a top ride or whatever, but is Renas better than any of the guys at Penske? Is he better than any of the guys at Ganassi? Is he better than any of the guys at Andretti? Is he better than any of the guys at McLaren? Right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's good, but so are they. Yeah. So who knows if he'll get a shot? There's so many moving pieces that mean what,
Don't forget, Alex Palou cut his teeth in IndyCar at Dale Coyne Racing.
Yeah.
There's no reason they can't be in the top 10 consistently.
Yeah, exactly. And Alex Palou showed what he got. David Malukas too, right?
Absolutely.
And Nolan Siegel. And all these drivers have moved into quote unquote top rides after being at Dale.
And showing well.
Yes. So I think he continues to do the best he can, and he's got a long
runway ahead of him.
Yeah. I mean, and then if you think back even further, like Justin Wilson was at Dale Coyne forever.
For quite a few years after winning a lot of races at
Will
Haas
was
or at Newman Haas, excuse me,
Yeah.
and Newman Haas in Champ Car.
so, and then
And racing at Jaguar in Formula One.
and then after he was signed to go to Andretti to a top ride when he passed away. So I don't think Dale Coyne is a career ender.
No, I think it's a great opportunity and a great place to reestablish and show how you can grow a program as well.
Exactly. This is from Chris Booker, who we know and love, and also have some of his art in our house because he's an amazing photographer. I think we're on the same page here. How good is Scott Dixon that he doesn't even need a radio?
Yeah.
Asked and answered, Chris.
Pretty good.
I don't know if you know the answer to this. What were Nolan and Will talking about to each other on the way to the safety car?
I don't. I saw Nolan afterwards, just make sure he was fine and touch base. And I said to him, I said, well, what do you think? He goes, it was a terrible way to end a great weekend.
Right.
And I think that was a really good perspective because, and I said, if you can figure out how to do this mentally, it was a great weekend. The race wasn't it happened.
It just never happened. This race never started, right? Move on.
So
it's 1 out of 17. He's got a lot of.
I would think Will and Nolan were talking about what led to the incident and what they saw and what they felt and probably where they were going for dinner that night. I mean, I have no idea.
I have no idea. Another question from Boog. Why didn't more teams have the same strategy as the 2010? I think we kind of answered this already, but maybe.
Yeah, we talked about that just as far as I think it was a riskier strategy starting on alternates. You had to commit that the alternates were not going to last, and you had to commit to a 3-stop from lap 1, and you rolled the dice that there was going to be a yellow early because the tires were not going to last nearly as well at the beginning of the race
as they were
at the end, because as rubber goes down, they slide less, they tear up less, they last longer.
Just right on brand here. Thoughts on no yellows after the first one?
Surprising, especially on a short circuit with drivers that being gym fit is very different than being race fit, especially with that extra weight in the car, the extra grip and load from the alternates.
And how hot was it?
It was not terrible hot. Like I said, it was Chamber of Commerce weather, just hit 70 degrees, beautiful sunshine, but it's one of the more physical races, and they added laps this year. Being a 100-lap event, it's hard. I remember I used to get out of the car after the first 100 laps of racing and felt like I'd done rounds with Renus's wife, with a prize fighter, a boxer. She won her second professional match Saturday night, Mexico City, 2-0. He goes, yeah, it was a short match. It's great. I like when she does that. Then I don't have to worry for very long. And I said, how do you think she feels about you? And he goes, yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
And so it's as much the muscles that hold the internal organs in place because you get bounced around so much. It's not just holding onto the wheel. It's the G-forces internally that your body feels more tired.
Do you want to explain to me why you wanted to be a race car driver after explaining that to me?
Because it's awesome. This is because life made sense at 200 miles an hour, honey. You know this.
I know.
And the other thing is, when you're out of the car, you can be in the gym, you can be in the best shape of your life, and it's not until you get in and you focus for 100 laps. And I talked to, it was Jacob Abel Sunday morning, and he said, how many laps have you done this weekend? I said, he goes, I don't know, 40 maybe?
Yeah.
He said, you're going to do 100 this afternoon. Take advantage of all the laps on offer. You will see stuff you've never seen before, and you will learn something every lap that you will apply to the next race and to the next year.
Yeah.
So with that, the next race.
Yeah.
Couple of weeks away, go to Thermal. It was a points prize money, or a non-points prize money exhibition race last year. This year, it's worth championship points. It's going to be really interesting. I think Pelot won it last year. Penske car.
But it was a weird setup last year, right? It was a heat
race because they couldn't do pit stops because the pit lane wasn't built enough. they're getting there. They're going to do pit stops this year, normal. I still think the Ganassi car is pretty good on that low grip, kind of dusty, permanent road course.
Because it's in a desert?
It's in a desert, the Palm Desert.
Yep.
And I think the Penske car will be good. I think normal suspects, Ganassi car will be pretty good. And I just want to say that I'm in an IndyCar fantasy league, and Chris Puker, who sent the questions in, finished 5th in our league yesterday. I finished 4th, so I'm playing with house money the rest of the year.
I have a work event in Irvine that weekend, but it doesn't really start till Sunday or Saturday. So I'm debating if I come out to Thermal on Friday or not and see everybody and say hi. So we'll see how that weekend plays out. And I guess if we need to, if you've got a lot of questions, we can do a follow-up for next week. If not, we'll see you in a couple weeks after Thermal.
We'll see you after Thermal.